we are live on YouTube.
Great.
And we are live on Zoom.
Welcome everybody who's joining us. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. We will begin promptly at 9:30. Hi, everybody. As you're joining in, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Make sure to send it to all panelists and attendees. I see we have some repeat people attending today. Good to see you. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. It is 9:30. Welcome to our K-12 Online Teaching Academy today. I am Stephanie Eichley-Chang. I will be co-hosting along with Brian Chung-Dooley. We're from the College of Education at San Jose State. And we have an exciting presenter here today who is returning to us. She presented for us a couple weeks back, and it's Lisa Nowakowski, and she's going to be talking to you about math today, EduProtocols and MathReps. And we will go over the announcements first, and I'll turn it right over to her. So just to remind you, this will be recorded and you will be able to access the recording after the event today. The captions are available in the recording, and so go ahead and follow the link. Brian will drop that into the chat. Your video and audio automatically are turned off, so if you do have questions, please put those in the Q&A and also use the chat to communicate, and we'll be watching for those, and Lisa will be answering questions along the way. And then if you'd like to join our Facebook group or a LinkedIn group to kind of connect with other people that are interested in the same thing and network that way, please follow the links that we have in the chat. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Oh, I see Jeremiah's here. Hey, Jeremiah. So of course, as I predicted, my dog is now barking in the background, so it'll get the other one started. So this is a great way to start the Wednesday. So super excited to be here. You guys are awesome. You guys are learning, and let me share my screen. And I'm going to do this one and share. So you should be seeing my slide deck. So there'll be 3 different options for the slide deck. And I know Brian, yeah, if you could put in the live session for Nearpod. So I know many of you have been doing it with Pear Deck. I don't have an allegiance to Pear Deck or Nearpod. My district happens to use Nearpod. I like them both for different reasons. So there's no, I don't have, oh no, did something go drastically wrong? Okay. So you should just be able to go ahead and click on the link, and then it should go ahead and pull it up. If you're having trouble, go ahead and click the escape key on your keyboard, and that should minimize your Zoom so that you can go ahead and jump on in. And I'll just give you a couple of seconds to go ahead and get on in here. So while we're waiting, so EduProtocols are pretty awesome. They're super fantastic. And I created a whole thing called MathReps that's based on EduProtocols. So throughout this, we're doing it on Nearpod because I want you to experience some of the EduProtocols that you can use with your students in the classroom. It's interactive, it's fun, and the kids absolutely love it. So the first protocol, it does use a program. I'm not sure how it's going to work in here. Sometimes if there's too many people in this one program, it kind of gets a little glitchy. So if that happens, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it and then we'll move on, but you'll get a little bit of a taste of what it's like. All right, so it looks like the numbers have kind of slowed down of people who are jumping in. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So you should see over on the right side of your screen, there might be a little tab that sticks out. You can take notes throughout this session and it'll be sent to you as well. So as Stephanie said, my name is Lisa Nowakowski. I have just finished my 25th year of teaching in the classroom, and due to COVID, I am now going to become a tech TOSA within my district to help my district integrate technology in meaningful ways. It just so happens that this COVID situation shined a light on this. So here's my information. You can get a hold of me at Noah Techie on Twitter. You can find MathReps at mathreps.org. I also do have another website. I forgot to put it on here, noahtechie.com. And there's my email address if you ever want to get a hold of me. I know if you try clicking on it during this session right now, you can't get any of the live links, which is why Brian at the end will, when you get all of the information, will send out the link to the actual slideshow that I created it on so that you can get the live interactive links. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what is the best thing that has come out of distance learning? I know some of you are teacher candidates and might not be aware of what the best thing is that's come out of it, but I know you have experienced it as a teacher. So go ahead, you can go ahead and answer. So I'm going to hide your names so that it'll just be hidden for the rest of the time so nobody knows. And of course, my dog is going to continue barking because that's what he does. I know for me, one of the best things that, building community, that's a great answer, is I got a new job out of this. I'm very excited about that. Trying new technologies, not much. I'm sorry to hear that not much good came out of it for you. I know this has been a hard time for a lot of people as well, and it's been very stressful. Creating meaningful community, learning more technologies, growth mindset. Seeing students come together. Oh, that's fantastic. Trying new technologies, the ability to play with new resources, right? How many of our districts were like, you know what, let's just play and experiment and see what happens. Oh, students who were not engaged seem to thrive online. You know what, I heard that a couple of times too in my district as well. That's so exciting. Working at your own pace. Not sitting in traffic every day. I'm fortunate my commute is only about 6 minutes from my house. Wow, such great answers. Collaborating with peers, no paper, right? No standing in line at the copy machines. Oh my God, how terrible was that, right? All right, so I'm going to move on. So what are EduProtocols? So Marlena Hebern and John Crippo created these protocols. And they're, they're basically things that you do in your classroom on a daily basis, routines that you would have, but they've created it so that they're so much more meaningful and that it supports the 4 Cs and it's it engages students. Students love EduProtocols. And they can be used with any subject at any grade level. My dog is barking so much, it's making me nervous. So the first EduProtocol we're going to talk about is the Fast and the Curious. This is a super, super fun one. So in this one, the teacher creates a quiz and you give it to the students cold on a Monday. You just give it to them. I know you're thinking, what? That's crazy. No, trust me, it works. Oh yes, and now my lawnmower man is here. See, I knew that was going to happen too. And so you do the first day you do it twice, but between the first time that you give the quiz and the second time you give the quiz, you review it. And then every day after that, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you will only give the quiz once and you don't need to review because the review is them doing the quiz on the daily basis. And it's super important that you track the percentage as a group. There's a couple different tools that you can use for this. For this purpose, we're going to use this program called Time to Climb. And you can go ahead and it'll prompt you to pick a character. And I see that we have 38 people. So once we get about 38 or so people in here, we'll go ahead and do it. So see all your little characters pop up. And if you scroll over, like there's several different pages of different characters that you can get. I love the turtle one. It reminds me of one of my students. He had this whole obsession with turtles last year. So he always picked the turtle for this one. And this one can get a little bit wonky if there are too many people in it, but I don't think that's the case for us. I think we'll be okay. But if this one goes a little wonky and gets a little glitchy, we'll go ahead and we'll just stop it, but we'll give you a little, an idea, a taste of what it's like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Let's see, it looks like we have about 30 people in. And if you don't have Nearpod, I have alternatives for you to use other tech options in your classroom. I even have some low tech options for you to use in your classroom as well, and we'll talk about that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click start. There we go, and it's got nice little music. So what we're talking about pizza today. Different types of pizza. Some of them will be easy, I'm not going to lie. Some of them, you know, I know some of these are hard, right? Like, you're doing terrible. This is exactly what you want the first time around. I promise you. And when I was doing this with my students, I would commentate and I had the names up. Ah, there we go. Now we can see people starting to move up. And there's no judgment here. If you're struggling with it, it's all good. No judgment. This one will probably be an easy one for you guys. And then this is the last question for you guys. Oh, yeah, yeah. All right, so you see that we have a whole slew of answers here, right? And you can go all the way down, and you can see how everybody did. One drawback is that I can't actually. I'm going to move this along. Is that I can't actually get a group percentage unless I like sit and average it out with this. I did see the question somewhere, was that game feature a part of Nearpod? The answer is yes. It is a part of Nearpod. It's a part of their free features, I believe. My district, like I said, happens to use Nearpod. I do not fall on the side of either Nearpod nor Pear Deck. I think they both are wonderful tools. Okay, so now you've gone through that, and some of you were probably like, Detroit style pizza, what? You know, St. Louis style pizza, like, like little ones in there. So like that was cold. You did terrible on it. That's fantastic. I mean, unless you know your pizzas, and then like hats off to you. So then what you would do is you would go through each one of those questions essentially. So what I did for this one is I created a slide deck, and to go through, like, New York style pizza is made with a characteristically large hand tossed thin crust, and it's often sold in wide slices to go. I'm sure most of you got that one. Chicago style pizza is baked in an iron skillet or a round steel pan. So you may or may not have known that one, but you are familiar with Chicago style pizza. Detroit style pizza. I am originally from Detroit, but I do not like Detroit style pizza. Shh. And I don't like Motown music, but don't tell anybody back home that. It is a rectangular pizza with a thick, crispy crust, and it's chewy. So it's not exactly like a deep dish, but it feels like it has that deeper dish outside on it. And then finally, the St. Louis pizza is a thin cracker-like crust. And it includes a white processed cheese known as Provel. And of course, somebody's now ringing my doorbell as well, because, when you plan things. So now what you would do if this was the first day, you would go ahead and you gave the quiz, you went over everything, and then you would give the quiz again, and you would record what the overall percentage was, and you keep the high and you keep the low. So you keep the lowest one that you started off at the beginning of the week, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to be horrifically low, and you just get excited about that. Then they take it again. So we're going to take it again, and you'll notice, like, oh, I know this answer. I know this answer. So this is based on brain science as well, where you're getting that immediate feedback with, excuse me, this sort of quiz. I'm going to give you one more minute. I'm going to close my door because mayhem is happening in my house. All right, that should be a little bit better now. So they're getting that immediate feedback, and you got that immediate feedback when you were playing the game of, like, no, that one's wrong. Yes, you got that answer right. So now when you play it again, you're definitely going to have a better score as a group. Again, it's always based on the group. See a couple more popping in. My poor puppy is going crazy. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and press start. And it's the same exact questions. You're gonna know all these answers. This is fantastic, and you'll go by much quicker too. Nice, nice. Look at all those people going up the hill now, right? Like they weren't all going up the hill the first time. Now you've had it your second time around. You're feeling a whole lot better about yourself. Number one place has 1,000 points. The first time around, it only had like 850 or 875 points. You know, and look at all these people who have already beat that this first round. Holy cow. Number one place again, like your points are just going through the roof on this one. And again, everybody's just going up. It's so much easier the second time around. And then the last question. Does the app take time to respond in its rankings? It might. I can't exactly remember. So you can see you most likely, I can look at the top scores and tell you did so much better this time around than the first time around. So I'm going to move off that because the noise drives me a little crazy after a while. So now think about the applications in your classroom. So you might be thinking, I don't have Nearpod, which this time to climb is super fun to play, but you know, there are some downsides to it. There's a downside to everything in my opinion. But there are some upsides, like it's super interactive, it's super fun. You can do it in the classroom, you can do it remotely. You can assign it, remotely as well. So if you have other tech options, so maybe you don't have Nearpod or you don't want to use Nearpod, that's fine. My preference in the classroom was quizzes. Just because, it gave me the percentage right away, like, as a group, it has these power-ups that the kids like to use. You can also use Kahoot or Gimkit. And so all of these are linked. You might not be able to link it from where you're at right now, but again, Brian will send that out to you. A low tech option is just using whiteboards and, having everyone show the answer at once. Plickers is another option. So if you don't have technology in your classroom, your students aren't one-to-one, or you have to share, Plickers is, I'm going to jump over here. So Plickers is each kid gets a card. So you can see this picture right here. Each student has a card and each side is marked A, B, C, or D. Each picture is a little bit different. So you can assign the students a card. So card number 1, you can give it to student number 1, and you can do that. And then you scan it with your phone and it'll keep that information in an app in your phone, and then you can, kind of track it along that way. So that's a really nice low tech way to do it if you don't have that. And, so many things are happening nowadays that we just don't always have the technology available. So you can use it for vocabulary. I'm going to skip math facts for just a moment and I'll talk about that. So you can use it for vocabulary, science concepts. I used it for Greek and Latin roots last year. I used it for types of sentences. Going back to math facts, we know timed tests are bad. So this is not about having a timed test in doing it with a timed test. My story is, and I did not want to do it for math facts, not going to lie, was speaking with John Carippo and he was like, do it. I was like, no. So we fought for about 5 minutes. He was trying to convince me. I was trying to convince him how wrong it was because it was far too much like a timed test. He said, no, it's really not. I said, yes, but it really is. So long story short, I tried it out. He was right. I was wrong. My students went from an average of about 57% knowing their multiplication facts, just 1 through 10. I didn't even do 1 through 12, 1 through 10s. They went from an average of 57% to just before winter break. We were at as a group, remember this is always group, 97%, which is amazing. So then we have, in my district, we have a 3-week break at the winter break time. So we came back and I thought, oh dear, this is not going to go well. So I gave it to them first day back after winter break. We had been off for 3 weeks. They had been staying up late. They had been doing TikTok. I don't know what these people do. And I was like, okay, so prepare yourself. Like we're going to go from 97 to probably like in the 80s. Like that's okay. We'll get it going again. No, we went from 97 before winter break to 94%. We only lost 3 percentage points as a whole class. So to me, that was like, oh, not only is it working because we're at a high percentage rate, it's sticking because they had 3 weeks off and they didn't practice their math facts over 3 weeks. I mean, they're 10, they didn't practice. So does anybody, before I move on to Thinslide, does anybody have any questions on Fast and Curious EduProtocol?
I'm not seeing any questions right now.
Okay.
If they want to pop them in the chat, they can.
Okay, so I just I'm going to give you a chance to kind of digest it all. And then at the end of each one, kind of go through it. So the next I'm going to talk about is Thinslide. So you can see Thinslide right here. And what Thinslide is, you get a slide deck. So the teacher creates a slide deck. I did not create a slide deck today. I'm going to use a different function within Nearpod, but you can go ahead and do that in a slide deck. It doesn't matter how you do it. And you give students a prompt. So I gave you kind of a fun prompt today, but you can talk about the theme of something, things like that. So each student gets 1 slide and they're responsible for 1 slide. They put 1 image on that slide based on the prompt and 1 word on the slide based on the prompt. They have a total of 3 minutes to finish this. And so that's not what I wanted. And so they just have 3 minutes. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to experience this. And like I said, I'm not giving you a slide deck. What I'm giving you is the collaboration piece on this. So you can go ahead and click down here. You can type, what is your dream pet? And then if you click this icon right here, you can also put an image. So I'm timing you. So see, I'm timing you. So you have 3 minutes to go ahead and tell me, what is your dream pet? No. And I always have to read that sign. It's like, this is a collaboration board. Do you want to monitor everything? The first time I did it, with my students, of course, I wasn't paying attention. And so I just clicked the blue button and it was like, oh, I have to monitor each and every one. All right. Sugar glider, a baby hippo. Ooh, look at kudos to the people who figured out how to put on a picture. Not judging if you didn't put on a picture. It's okay. Ooh, a labradoodle, a horsey. Dog. I saw a unicorn. That was mine. But mine was like a non-pooping, non-shedding unicorn. Ooh, narwhal. Baby panda. They're so fun to watch them play. Koala. That was my favorite animal as a kid. Look at how cute. That looks like a little baby Fiona, huh? A baby elephant. Baby elephants are so silly too. Oh, a mini dragon. Oh, that's a great picture. A labradoodle. That must be you and your labradoodle. Go you. Bonus points for you on doing that. Yay. Oh, a hyperallergen. Oh, I am highly allergic to cats. So that one's hyperallergenic. That one's yay. Oh, look. Aw. What phoenix. Fantastic. And for those of you who are on here too, if you were like, oh yeah, I saw a unicorn up here somewhere. So I'd be like, yeah, unicorn. So I'm going to put a little heart by that one because, oh, I think that one's great. Oh yeah, unicorn and koala. So you can kind of go ahead and you can also just kind of plunk some of those things in. And then what you would normally do is the students would normally present. But in this situation, I'm not going to present. You aren't going to present, I should say. So, all right. Oh my God, how cute. Oh gosh, a mountain dog. Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move on. So some other tech options. So if you're not using Nearpod, like I said, you can use Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint, Google Jamboard. I am such a fan of Jamboard lately. I just can't even get over myself on that one. It's fantastic. If you don't have any tech options, you can draw it on paper. You can put it on a whiteboard. If you have, depending on the age of your students and what you're doing, you can use a phone and a pen and hand it in that way. You can assign it. If you're going to use something like Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint, excuse me. Oops, there we go. You want to have your slide deck ready to go, and then you can push it out to your students depending on the age level. If you're using something like Google Classroom, and I'm not sure if Teams works the same way, and I'm sure it does, you can assign each student. So this was from Marlena Hebern. She had suggested assign one slide per kid in Google Classroom, and then use the grading window in Google Classroom to project all of them and flip through them so that they can go ahead and give the presentation themselves. I love that. So when to use this? So when could you use Thinslide? So you can use it for vocabulary. You can use it for numeracy, meaning ways to show a number. I love that way of doing it. A science concept, a theme of a book or a story or a passage. Or just to reflect on learning, and that was Marlena as well, just to reflect on your learning of what you learned, what you got out of that. So that was Thinslide. Do you have any questions on Thinslide?
I think there's a question here, but it's going back about the math facts. When did the math facts, did you mix them up, sorry, or did you go in order of mastery for math facts, multiplication 1 through 10?
Great question. I mixed them up. And one of the features on quizzes that I use is that it'll just randomly give the students. So there's a set population. So if you go onto quizzes, I didn't even make any of the quizzes up. I just found them online, went through them to make sure that they were right, because sometimes kids make the quizzes and then they put wrong answers on accident. Just kind of assigned it to my students, the same quiz for the entire week. And it just had random ones on it. Some of the harder ones, the 4s, of course, the 6, 7, 8s, where they get all tripped up on that one. And I would do no more than 10 to 15 questions a week. And again, it was the same questions Monday through Friday. With the Fast and the Curious, with the math facts, get this. My students begged. I was like, no, we only do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They begged to do it on Fridays. That never happens with a time test to practice their math facts. Another great story from the Fast and Curious, the previous one, is that I had a student student A, and she, you know, wanted to get 100%. There were a few incentives in my classroom if you got 100%. So I would have students like literally write down answers and like, you know, type it in, whatever, I don't care. And what she would do is within quizzes, she would do it, and she knew if she got one wrong, she was okay, because at the end it gives you a redemption question, so you can go back and fix that answer and still get 100%. She would get 2 wrong, student A, and she would log herself out and then tell me, she's like, Miss N, it bumped me out. It didn't. I went along with it. And then she would jump back in and get 100%. And she would go out as many times as she needed to get back in, just so she could get 100%. So student A ended up practicing her math facts twice as much as anybody else in my classroom. And she was a low achieving student. And so like this motivated her. Any other questions?
No, I think you can move on. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Iron Chef. Okay, I love, love, love Iron Chef. So think about it like Jigsaw on steroids. So in a normal Jigsaw, you get part of a passage, or you get part of a lesson, you get part of a lesson, you get part of a lesson, you get part of a lesson. And you go and you teach you learn your one thing, and then you teach it to the rest of your group. I was that awful child who I didn't care what you had to say. I was practicing my whole monologue and what I was going to teach you. And I didn't care what your part was. I wasn't mean. I was just selfish. So in Iron Chef, yes, much like it's based on the actual TV show, the teacher creates a slide deck with 4 activity slides. The students will work together in groups of 4. Each activity slide has a link to a different topic. Like we're going to look at the pizza one. Sorry, I know somebody said now that you're hungry for pizza. I'm sorry, we're going to look at the pizza one again. And then you set a timer. The timer is there because there's this thing called Parkinson's law, where if it takes as long as the time that you give them. So if you're giving them 20 minutes, they're going to take all 20 minutes and still not finish. So you give them 10 minutes. And they're really going to, like, they have to work diligently and they have to work quickly. So the students work independently in their group of 4. So there's a group of 4 of you. You get 1 slide. And then person number 2 gets a slide, person number 3 gets a slide, person number 4 gets a slide. And at the end, you do 10 minutes. At the end, the group presents. So if you have 4 in a group and you have, say, 24 students in your classroom, and everybody's there that day because it all works out magically that way, you go ahead and everybody presents, and each group only has 3 minutes to present. So what's happening, which is super fun, is that the kids are hearing the same information, because group 1 has the 4 different concepts that are all the same, so on and so forth. So they're hearing the same information 6 times. How impactful is that? It's so much more impactful than just going back to my group and teaching my part to my group. So let's look at what this looks like. So here we have an Iron Chef. And this is just the first slide. You would have the partner names on it. Nobody ever does that in my classroom. Drives me banana pants. And then you would give this to the group leaders. So if you're working in something like Google Classroom, what I would do is I would assign this slide deck to the group leader only. And there's a way to do that within Google Classroom, so that just the group leader gets this particular slide deck, and then they share out the slide deck with their group, and then they'll delete the slide at the end, or not, because if they're in my class, they don't listen. And I'm sure my class is the only one in your class actually does this. They listen. So of course this is about my pizza, because I like pizza. So person number 1 would have to talk about Chicago style pizza. These are just basic things that I put on here to help guide the students. I gave them a particular link to go to, so they don't need to do anything else. You give them the passage, you give them the link to go to, so that they're not spending their time doing that, because their job is to add 3 or 4 facts. That's it, and 1 image. And then for fast finishers, you have a secret ingredient and it will relate to your topic. In this case, because it's a fun activity, you know, an image of an unusual topping, but it doesn't have to be that. And then the kids can like zhuzh up the slide, but it's important for you to remind them that their first and foremost task is to find 3 to 4 facts and an image, and they have 10 minutes. Once they get that done, then they can zhuzh up their slide, they can make it pretty, they can do the crazy fonts, they can put the GIFs on it, it doesn't even matter. And so then person number 2 would do New York style pizza, same thing, right? Person number 3 does Detroit style pizza, and person number 4 does St. Louis style pizza. At the end of the 10 minutes, each group gets up, they present their slide deck. So whoever person number 1 was, they present their slide, and everybody goes through it that way. So again, they're hearing that same information over and over and over again. So some tech options would be Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint. You could use Google Jamboard as well. If you don't have any, if you don't have tech, or if you have low tech in your classroom, you can draw it on paper. You can have the whiteboard. You can have the phone and the pen. You can actually have paper copies that the kids are doing it on. And then after I made this and I sent all the information out, I realized, oh, you can just have a big white piece of paper, and with sticky notes, you know, you can do it that way too. So there's different ways that you can do it. So a few pro tips, things that I've learned, is you assign the groups ahead of time. So make sure that you have your groups ready to go ahead of time. And when, like I touched on this already, you assign it to leaders through either Google Classrooms or Microsoft Teams, so they can like help push it out to their group. When you do that and the leaders are pushing it out and sharing it, make sure you don't start the timer right away. Give them a little bit of that, you know, that share time to actually get it out, and then start the timer. So when to use this is when you're introducing a new topic. It's my favorite time to do it, is actually when you're doing like a new topic. You can do it with presidents, most common grammar errors, math terms. There is a math one that we're going to look at next. Science terms and concepts, and it's recommended by John Crippo to do approximately one of these a week, just to kind of keep that momentum going. So again, it goes with any subject matter that you can think of. So were there any questions? I saw there were some things in the chat, but I didn't look at the chat.
Just a quick question. What is phone and pen?
Like if you just have your own phone and like you're writing it and you're pushing it out. So that would depend on your actual, your grades. So like 5th grade, I couldn't say, go get your phones and, you know, I'm going to put it into Google Classroom for you. But if you're teaching at an upper grades, they probably all have their phones. They can use their finger to write on. That's what I mean.
Great, thanks.
Okay, excuse me. Oh, we're doing fantastic on time. I love when that happens. So I touched on this just a minute ago. SousChef is based on Iron Chef, and I was doing a presentation on Iron Chef in Union School District, excuse me, up by San Jose. And I got to talking to a teacher afterwards, and she was like, oh, could you do this with math? I was like, oh, that's a fantastic idea. So it's the same concept where you get, and we'll look at an example, because I'm a person who either needs to see it or I need to like experience it before I completely understand it. So you still get a title slide, you get 4 activity slides. Each activity slide has, so you can do one of 2 ways in this way, a math problem to solve. So you might have the same math problem, I'm going to say 4 times 3. So you have the same math problem, but you have to solve it in different ways. So each person gets their own method of solving it, you know, whether it's using an array or using the area model, or, you know, any other models that they can, you know, the different groups and things like that they can get. And you set a timer. Now, this is also very, very important. This is not set a timer like time test. This is, again, going back to that Parkinson's law of it takes as long as the time that you have. We want to set a timer so that they stay on track. It's not to make them nervous and give them that anxiety. So you're going to give them enough time that they can be successful in it, but not so much time that they're going to waste the first 5-10 minutes, right? Again, they're working independently in a group of 4. The leader shares out the slides. Each student chooses one slide, and the group will present as a whole. So same picture, SousChef, partner names, right? And all of this information, like I will give you the resources to everything. All of these EduProtocols are free because that's the philosophy. So again, that. All right. So what I have the students do sometimes, because I'm such a fan of having kids write things out, and my students have whiteboards, they physically write it out. They take a picture on with their Chromebook, and then they can insert that picture directly into the slide for themselves to share. So if we look at this, so this was, I know it was fractions, so I had done it with fractions. You can do it with any math problem that you can think of. I had the students I gave them one like addition fraction. So 5/6 plus 2/8, make it up, right? So student number 1, everybody's doing the same math problem, but one person's doing it in an area model. Another person is doing the number line model. A third person uses the algorithm. And then the fourth person, so you have an option on this one as well, the fourth person writes a word problem that goes with that fraction problem, or you have them in groups of 3, and as a group of 3, they come up with their own word problem. It's up to you what will work best with your students. And then their secret ingredient is an example in the real world. If you have something like you're just starting out a concept and you really want everybody to kind of get it, you would have student number 1, I'm going to go back to multiplication. They might have, everybody has to solve it, say within array model. Person number 1 might get 4 times 3. Person number 2 might get 2 times 8. Person number 3 gets a third math problem, and then you can give a fourth math problem or give a word problem if you want to do that. Again, it's going to depend on your students and your needs. You know your people better than I do. Again, tech options are the same as before, and I have the same pro tips for you on this one. So when to use it, I like to use it when I'm reviewing previously learned concepts, like you saw with the fractions, adding fractions in the different models. And it also helps to connect those different methods so that the students can see in one presentation the 3 different ways that you can solve that problem. All right, do you have any questions?
I think you're going along pretty well.
Oh, goodness. Makes me nervous. Okay, hopefully I'm being clear and like you know, people aren't zoning out on me. But if you're zoning out, you do you, boo. I'm not going to judge. We're all in this together. All right, so sketch and tell. I love this one too. So this one's a really fun one. So sketch and tell is that you link it to, the teacher has either a passage or a selection or a video or an activity. You're actually going to do this one with us today. This one's going to be an activity. You have the opportunity to prepare a template, but you don't have to. It'll just depend on what you want to do. Sometimes you know, okay, let's be real, teachers. Sometimes we just do stuff on. Students will work in pairs. So they'll, in this case today, you're going to do an activity. We're not going to work in pairs. It's a little bit harder right now. So you would, but in the classroom, you would have them work in pairs. This works great online, the way we're going to do it. And then at the end of the activity, they're going to complete a sketch of like the main idea this to your students. So you can have the students look at this. So I want you to do this because you will have an activity afterwards. You can change the denominator here. Of course, I taught 5th grade and like we ended in March and we were, you know, just finishing up fractions. So of course I have fractions on the brain. You can have them do the circular and play around. I want you to play around with it too. You know, the circular part, you know, you can drag it up here. You can see 1/4 is the same as 2/8. You can change the numerator around. Go. You can also see that you can do it on the number line so that they're getting all of these different ideas and activities. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds more to go ahead and play around with this. PhET is amazing. It has really great interactive math activities and science activities as well. So if you haven't checked it out, go for it. Check it out. It's a really great website. It just happens to play well with Nearpod. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to move on because I'm watching our time as well, and I want to be mindful of our time. So now you should have a thing on your screen to draw. So you can draw, there's a text box that you can use as well. There are certain things. So now what I would ask my students to do is show two equivalent fractions, and I want them to use a picture and the number line model. So 1/2 equals 2/4. Give me, I don't care what two equivalent fractions you have, right? Like 1/3 and 2/6 or whatever. I don't care. But it would be showing like the progress or the understanding that they got from the activity. I tried to keep it like a low-key one for us. So you can see, I can see it in real time, like who's doing what. So you can see like this person did a rectangular one while this person is doing, a circular one. I can see that. Here's a number line model. This is so you can see what the students understand. Oh, this is fantastic. 1/2 equals, and then they showed it over here. This is a great way of showing that. Oh, awesome. So you're showing 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So you can see that, if your students are totally understanding it as well. And thank you guys so much for participating in this. Like I said, for me, I am one of those people, I need to not only see it in action, I have to participate with it in action and kind of play with it. And then I truly get a better understanding than just reading. Oh, that's awesome too. So you can see all the different kinds of models and the way that your students learn. Ah, somebody found the drawing tools. Awesome. When would I use these protocols? It really depends. Some of them are in the middle, some of them are at the end, some of them are at the beginning. When doing problems like Iron Chef or SousChef, are you having, oh, I don't know where that went. Okay, I'm going to stop trying to do two things at once because I can't do that. It's a Polish thing. It's a bad joke. Don't worry about it. We're good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds and then we're going to move on. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. So some tech options for this, you can use it in Google Draw. So have your kids do a sketch and tell in Google Draw, Google Slides, PowerPoint, Jamboard. I do have a list of alternatives. I'm not familiar enough with other tools that are in like Microsoft, the Microsoft world. So I did look up some other alternatives that you might want to use as well. Again, here you have your low tech or no tech options. Paper copies, you can just have them do it on a piece of paper, have them cut it in half or fold it in half, draw on one side, write on the other side. Zero prep for you, right? Hi. And I'm all about the zero prep for me. The less work I have to do, the better. As I told my students, the person who's doing the work is the person who's learning. I said that so often that they could recite that for me. A few pro tips is just go ahead and put it with partners ahead of time, which I'm sure you already do. Take time for each part, so time it so that, again, that Parkinson's law, that they're staying on track. And you might want to play some music just to kind of, keep it fun and light and, simple. So when to use sketch and tell might be like link it to multiple forms of a representation within the one assignment. You can develop a conceptual understanding of the different content. I really like using it for both math and science. It works fantastic for both. So what questions do you have for sketch and tell?
I'm seeing some questions, but kind of going back a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure, sure.
I think they're going back to when you were giving Google Slides and they were working with the group. So when they share, if they get it wrong, do you correct or have the students correct them?
I've had this, it depends. So let me take that back. I was gonna say have the students correct them. It depends. So for some of my struggling learners, I will purposely make sure that they get a specific slide. So maybe some of my resource students, I make sure that they all get like the same slide. Okay, you're gonna have slide number, whatever, in your slide deck. And then I pull them to the back and we'll work maybe as a group. Another option for me on that one too, is with like some of my resource or struggling students is, okay, as a group, hi, we're a group of 4. We're all going to do this back together. So kind of giving them that extra support. Sometimes depending on the kid, because you know, if I know that they're capable of it and they've made a mistake, I usually let the students do it, correct each other. Again, I've created a culture of, just a culture in my classroom that it's okay to be wrong. And if you're, giving, pointing out something that's wrong with another student's work, make sure that you're respectful with that. I hope that answers that question.
Great, yes, thank you.
All right. All right, so moving on, we're doing fantastic on time. So those were just a few of the EduProtocols that you can use in your classroom. So there's something called 8 parts of speech. Get this out of the way. Let's see, I don't know where I have that up here. Comic number, well, we'll get to 8 parts of speech. I know it's on the next slide. There's something called sentence parts. Oh, here it is. Here's 8 parts. So you can see 8 parts of speech. Instead of teaching one part of speech a week for 8 weeks, so week 1 we do nouns, week 2 we do verbs, adjectives, so on and so forth. You just do them all at once for 8 weeks. Sounds crazy, but it works. Another one is sentence parts. So once they've mastered the 8 parts of speech, you have sentence parts, and you have the different types of sentences, writing in a positive, writing a semicolon, and you would do this together the first time around. There's a bit more explanation on your Nearpod slide deck. I also linked it to the EduProtocols website, so you'll have that information as well. There's something called Cyber Sandwich, which is kind of a think, pair, share. So if there are 2 people in your group, you use a slide. Student 1, you give them an article. So student 1 takes notes, student 2 takes notes, and then they compare their notes. So you have basically a Venn diagram situation here. And the last one is an alternative to book reports. It's called Bookakucha. It's based on Pechakucha, which is you get like 3 slides and you have to talk about them. So it just goes on, and it does tell you how to do this on here. So for the classrooms, you have a presentation. It's 1 to 3 slides. So these are some of the ideas that you can use for nonfiction. What caused this, cause and effect, explain a process, evaluate the supporting evidence. So all of those things. And then she also has, Marlena made this, she also has, so different things for science and history and PE. So I'm going to go back over here. So those are just a few of the EduProtocols. So like I said, I'm looking at our time. So this is the 8 parts of speech, which is what MathReps was originally based on, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So what John Crippo did, and I think this goes back to the late 90s, is he just decided we're just going to do everything at once. And I remember teaching 3rd grade, and like nouns could last, 6 weeks. You have nouns, and you have common nouns, and you have proper nouns, and then you have, possessive nouns, and pronouns get thrown in there, and so it takes many weeks to do it. So John just decided you get a picture. You can get any crazy, wild picture. You can get a GIF. It doesn't matter. And then you do 3 nouns. One of them has to be a proper noun. And the first week you do it together. By the end of the week, they don't need you to do it with them as much. And if you do it on paper, so you have the choice of doing it on paper, or you can do it digitally. I've done it on paper in the past. And so what my students will do is they'll flip over the paper and look at it from the previous day to remind themselves what a noun is, what an adjective is. And then they have to write a paragraph here. They love this. They love writing the paragraph. They get to read it out loud. We played games where I was listening for verbs. And so they would have to find the verbs as they listened. So it's a really great activity for them just to get everything at once. So practice, you practice nouns for 8 weeks. You practice adjectives for 8 weeks instead of nouns for 1 week, verbs for 1 week. So based on that, I created MathReps, and I originally created them just for my own use in my classroom, because I noticed at the beginning of the year when we were doing multiplication and place value that by the end of the year in 5th grade, they've forgotten everything they learned in the first trimester. So I created this, and then I realized I need several of them. It's not as easy as creating 8 parts of speech like John had. And so, the student gets, the only thing I do is the student changes this, this number once a day. And then every day we'll do this paper. In the beginning, you're going to do it together. You might not get through the whole paper. That's okay. In the beginning, you might take you 2 days to get through this paper, and it's going to take you a long time that first day, and you're going to want to pound your head against a wall because it's going to feel a whole lot better than working with your class on doing this. Not that they can't do it, just it's so laborious. By the end of the week, you can get it down to about 12 to 15 minutes. So it is definitely manageable. Stick with it, I promise you. And here are some other MathReps. And so I will go over, here it is. So Write Bites, I love Write Bites. So you get a picture, and so you can put a picture here. The student comes up with 4 different equations. So it's kind of like number talk. So you get an image, they come up with 4 equations, and then they write a word problem. So an example might be you create this image, here are some equations, and then here is a word problem that goes with it. I have a deep love of this one. This is called Defenders of Mathemagicalville. It's a long name, long story behind it. A student of mine who is now in 6th grade going into 7th grade next year created this character. And so let me get to it. So what you would do is you would create a word problem or a problem, and you have the students solve this problem in 3 steps. I can also see this working really, really well with science to kind of break down some of those scientific things that you would do. Teacher can give a hint, and then you can collect it. So instead of putting name, they decided like it's the tales of, and then that's where the name would go. You can collect it and keep that for the entire school year. And kind of have a comic at the end. There's tic-tac-toe math, which I do like as well. And Jeremiah, who I know is on here, created this for the original MathReps. You can go ahead and take a picture of it, and you can kind of keep a log of what your students have been doing, so you can keep all of that information in one location. All right, so here is the resource slide, and you will get this too. I know Brian's going to send it out. I see we are out of time. And shameless plug, I am a part of TLC Ninja. So if you would like to join Nancy and myself, it's a 15-minute podcast. We would love to have you on and hear about some of your experiences and some of the things that you are doing. And finally, special thanks to Marlena Hebern and John Crippo, the original authors of the EduProtocols books, and Jeremiah Roosh, who is co-author with me on the 3rd EduProtocols book with math. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Your energy was great. I know it got a little fast there at the end for, just
I know,
trying to
I'm
get
sorry
everything
about
in.
that, folks.
No. I think it's fine. I wanted to use that as a nice way to invite people to transition over to the debrief session with us today, because you're going to be joining us.
Yes.
So if you didn't get your question answer, I hope you have time to come over and join us in the debrief session. Do know that this has all been recorded, and you will have access to this afterwards. So you can go back, check it out. You'll have her slides, you'll have everything. So I suggest you explore more because there were so many great ideas. So I would like to thank Lisa for her webinar time right now. And if you can all join us in the debrief session and ask your questions, we will see you there soon. We're going to just transition over. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.